A son of the desert, Gaddafi's early life. Muammar Gaddafi's story began in the vast, unforgiving deserts of Libya. Born in 1942 near Sirte, he hailed from a humble Bedouin family. Life was nomadic, traversing the harsh landscape for sustenance. This upbringing instilled in young Muammar a deep connection to the land and its people. The desert's stark beauty and its unforgiving nature shaped his worldview. Education was scarce, but Gaddafi showed a thirst for knowledge. He attended a local religious school, absorbing Islamic teachings. Later, he moved to Saga for a secular education. These formative years exposed him to a world beyond the desert. He learned about Libya's history, its colonization by Italy, and the yearning for independence. These lessons resonated deeply with the young Gaddafi. He witnessed the disparities between the haves and the have-nots. Gaddafi's experiences fueled a growing sense of injustice. The seeds of revolution were sown in these early years. Seeds of ambition, the making of a revolutionary. Gaddafi's pursuit of knowledge led him to Benghazi in 1961. He enrolled in the prestigious Libyan University, immersing himself in history and political science. The university was a melting pot of ideas. Students from diverse backgrounds engaged in lively debates about Libya's future. Gaddafi thrived in this environment, forming a close-knit group of like-minded individuals. Inspired by the pan-Arabism of Gamal Abdel Nasser, Gaddafi became convinced that revolution was the only path to true liberation. He believed in a united Arab world, free from Western imperialism. Gaddafi's revolutionary fervor intensified during his time at the Benghazi Military College. He saw the Libyan army as an instrument for change. He envisioned a military force that served the people, not foreign interests. Gaddafi began cultivating support within the military, carefully selecting officers who shared his vision. These young officers formed the nucleus of the Free Officers movement, dedicated to overthrowing the monarchy. Their plans were hatched in secrecy, fueled by their shared ambition and unwavering belief in Gaddafi's leadership. The Green Revolution, Gaddafi's bloodless coup. On September 1, 1969, Gaddafi, with his loyal Free Officers movement, launched a swift and bloodless coup d'état. King Idris I, on holiday in Turkey, was deposed. The monarchy crumbled without resistance. The coup, dubbed the Green Revolution, ushered in a new era for Libya. Gaddafi, at the age of 27, emerged as the de facto leader of the newly formed Libyan Arab Republic. He abolished the monarchy and all its symbols. The old order was swept away, replaced by a revolutionary government. Gaddafi addressed his nation with fiery speeches, outlining his vision for a just and prosperous society. He promised to eradicate poverty, empower the marginalized, and restore Libya to its rightful place on the world stage. The Green Revolution was met with jubilation by many Libyans. They saw in Gaddafi a savior, a leader who understood their struggles. His message of social justice, economic equality, and Arab unity resonated deeply. Gaddafi wasted no time in implementing his ambitious agenda. A new Libya Gaddafi's vision takes shape. Gaddafi embarked on an ambitious program of modernization and social transformation. He implemented his Third Universal Theory, outlined in his Green Book. This political philosophy aimed to create a just and equitable society. Gaddafi's vision extended beyond Libya's borders. He sought to champion the cause of developing nations, advocating for a fairer world order. One of Gaddafi's most significant achievements was the improvement of living standards for Libyans. Under his rule, literacy rates soared. Healthcare became accessible to all. Housing projects transformed urban landscapes, providing modern accommodations for citizens. Gaddafi elevated the status of women, granting them equal rights and opportunities. He abolished laws that discriminated against women, empowering them to participate fully in society. Gaddafi's economic policies, fueled by Libya's vast oil wealth, yielded impressive results. He spearheaded massive infrastructure projects, including the construction of the Great Man-Made River. Gaddafi's nationalization of industries and his socialist economic model drew criticism from Western powers. Gaddafi's relationship with the West was complex and often confrontational. He vehemently opposed Western imperialism and challenged the global dominance of the United States. Gaddafi's anti-Western rhetoric resonated with many in the developing world. He provided financial and military aid to groups fighting against Western-backed regimes. These actions earned him the label of sponsor of terrorism from the United States. However, Gaddafi remained defiant, arguing that he was supporting legitimate struggles against oppression. His supporters lauded his courage in standing up to Western powers. His detractors condemned his support for terrorism and his authoritarian rule. Gaddafi's defiant stance towards the West came at a price. His support for groups deemed terrorists led to increasing isolation and sanctions. The United States accused Libya of involvement in the bombing of a Berlin discotheque frequented by American soldiers. This incident resulted in a U.S. airstrike on Tripoli and Benghazi in 1986. The 1988 bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, further escalated tensions. The West blamed Libya for the attack, which killed 270 people. The UN imposed crippling sanctions on Libya, demanding Gaddafi hand over the suspects. The sanctions had a devastating impact on the Libyan economy. Once a thriving nation, Libya struggled under the weight of international pressure. Despite the sanctions and international condemnation, Gaddafi remained defiant. The economy stagnated and living standards began to decline. Gaddafi's rule was a paradox. He was a dictator who ruthlessly suppressed dissent, but also a visionary leader who brought significant progress to Libya. He improved living standards, empowered women, and challenged Western dominance. Yet he was also responsible for human rights abuses and the suppression of basic freedoms. Gaddafi's legacy in Libya is complex and contested. His supporters credit him with transforming Libya from a poor, underdeveloped nation into a modern state. They point to his investments in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Gaddafi's detractors argue that his rule was marked by repression and a lack of basic freedoms. They point to his brutal crackdown on dissent and his imprisonment of political opponents. The world takes notice. Gaddafi's influence on global politics. Gaddafi's influence extended far beyond Libya's borders. He was a vocal critic of the West, challenging the established world order. He championed the cause of developing nations, advocating for a fairer distribution of global wealth and power. His pan-Arabist vision resonated with many in the Arab world. Gaddafi used Libya's oil wealth to support liberation movements and challenge Western hegemony. His support for the Palestine Liberation Organization made him a hero to many Palestinians. Gaddafi's defiance of the West earned him admiration from many in the developing world. His critics accused him of supporting terrorism and destabilizing the region. Gaddafi's influence on global politics was undeniable. The Arab Spring Uprising, a turning point in Gaddafi's rule. The Arab Spring reached Libya in February 2011. Inspired by the revolutions in Tunisia and Egypt, Libyan protesters took to the streets, demanding an end to Gaddafi's four-decade rule. The protests quickly escalated into a full-blown armed rebellion. Gaddafi responded with brutal force, unleashing his security forces on unarmed protesters. The regime's brutal crackdown drew international condemnation. The UN Security Council imposed sanctions on Libya and authorized a no-fly zone to protect civilians. As the rebellion gained momentum, Gaddafi's grip on power began to weaken. Rebels, aided by NATO airstrikes, made significant territorial gains. The fall of a dictator, Gaddafi's demise. By August 2011, the rebels had seized control of most of Tripoli, effectively ending Gaddafi's reign. The dictator refused to surrender and went into hiding. He vowed to fight to the death, urging his supporters to resist the rebels and their foreign backers. Gaddafi's whereabouts remained unknown for months. On October 20, 2011, Gaddafi's luck ran out. He was captured by rebel forces in his hometown of Sirte. The circumstances surrounding his capture and death remain controversial. Video footage showed Gaddafi alive and being dragged through the streets by a mob of angry rebels. He was then shot and killed, his body displayed in a public spectacle. Gaddafi's death marked the end of an era in Libya. The country now faced the daunting task of rebuilding after decades of authoritarian rule and a bloody civil war. A contested legacy. Gaddafi's enduring impact. Muammar Gaddafi's legacy remains a subject of debate and controversy. He was a complex and contradictory figure, a revolutionary leader who challenged Western dominance but also a ruthless dictator who suppressed dissent. His rule was marked by both significant progress and brutal repression. Gaddafi transformed Libya from a poor, underdeveloped nation into a modern state with a high standard of living. He invested heavily in education, healthcare and infrastructure, improving the lives of millions of Libyans. He championed the cause of developing nations, advocating for a fairer world order. His support for liberation movements earned him both admiration and condemnation. Gaddafi's authoritarian rule came at a high price. He ruthlessly suppressed dissent, imprisoned political opponents, and silenced critical voices. His human rights record was abysmal. Gaddafi's legacy is a complex tapestry woven from threads of progress, repression, defiance, and tragedy.